30 years ago, it was all about grace. Guess what? It still is. Let's talk about it with Dudley Hall on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
We are so glad you're here. I'm the aforementioned old white guy. Eric Guzman is here. Last week, Eric took something that altered his consciousness.
Are you outing me here? What?
He took a nap.
Oh, yeah. It's rare.
Was that the weekend? Was that the weekend that you slept 5 different times all weekend?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's like a lost weekend.
2 of our guys are not here, Zach and Matthew. I think it was something that Eric said, but I'm not absolutely sure.
Zach's running around chasing down his ducks.
That's true. And our producer, Jinx, is working hard in the little glass booth. Jinx says he never met a man that he didn't mic. And,
I'll tell you that story one day.
It's so funny.
Oh my goodness, we don't have enough time for him to tell that story, let me tell you.
Is it safe for little ears?
No,
I
it's not
didn't
even
think
safe
so.
for big ears.
And Kathy is the soft feminine side of the program. Kathy just got back from Arkansas. For trivia bucks, Arkansas's highest point is Mount Magazine at 2,753 feet. And Arkansas's lowest point was when Kathy left.
Oh, Matthew, what a nice thing to say.
By the way,
Yes.
Dudley Hall, and I like this guy a lot. I really do. I mean, he's been doing this for a long time. You know, I kind of got the idea that grace may be true, but I wasn't sure because I had a lot of vested interest in power and ecclesiastical career and making sure that nobody thought that I was anything less than righteous. So it was a slow thing. I'm recovering. But when I got to that mountain and saw God's grace, Dudley Hall was sitting there. And he had been there for a long, long time. Dudley is a Bible teacher, he's speaker, preacher, consultant, has a master's of divinity from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary and has been living it down ever since. And a bachelor's degree from Samford University. That's Matthew's alma
Yes, it
mater,
is.
by the way.
Yeah.
He's the founder and president of Kerygma Ventures, and his latest book is actually, you know, it happens when you start getting old. You don't want to do this anymore. So you go dip into the files and find an old, moldy book. You bring it out and you look
re-release
at
it.
Yeah, but you got to go through it first to make sure that the pronouns are properly gender neutral. You got to make sure that the stupid things you said 30 years ago are exorcised from the text, and you got to make sure that the cover is better than the first one. But old guys get out old books and bring them out and redo it. I've done that myself.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you've done that.
That's right. Actually, it's a classic, and it's a book that has absolutely changed lives all over the world. It was called Grace Works, and I think I'd have called it Grace Still Works, Dudley, if I'd done that. But I hold his book, the reissued book, in my nicotine-stained fingers. It's the foreword is by Amy Grant.
Wow.
And the title is Grace Works, Rescued from Senseless Rebellion and lifeless religion.
Sounds like I can use this.
It's right up your alley, Eric.
I swing back and forth between those two.
Dudley, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here, Steve. So glad to be with you.
Well, it's good to have you with us. A lot of guests leave by now, and you decided to stay around. Did people just push you on? Do it again, Dudley?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that.
That was a short interview.
Dudley, this is radio. You got to quit. You can't do yes, no. You got to expand on it a bit. You're a preacher, and you can do this.
You got to ask questions like, how did you feel about the release of the book again after 27 years? You know?
That's a good question. Does it?
Yeah, that's right.
Does it? When you pick it up and you read it, have you changed your mind about anything?
No, not except what you were saying, going back through it and saying, oh, my gosh, I can't believe I said it that stupidly or that whatever. But, no, I have not changed my mind. I think every time I start thinking about that, I just realize that I have never overstated grace. I always understate it because it's too big. It's too good. It's way more radical than I've discovered yet, and that keeps me going because the more I taste the love of God, the unconditional love of God, the grace of God, the more I taste it, the more I realize how as you said, I'm still recovering from both religion and rebellion. So, I just wish I knew how to say it more radical. Steve, not less.
Me too. And, because we do get a lot of criticism, I know that not everybody was happy with the kinds of things that you said. And I don't know about you, but sometimes, like at 3 o'clock in the morning, the demons come, and I began to think, I hope I'm not screwing everybody up. And if I am, I'm in serious trouble, because if this grace thing isn't true, I don't have a prayer. I mean, I don't have any hope. So just reading through your book this morning was like, this is so good because I'm right.
You were just talking, Dudley, about how radical it is, and Steve was saying how he doesn't have any hope if this isn't true. I think there are a lot of Christians who hear the word grace and go, yeah, I know what that means.
Yeah.
Grace, of course. Yeah, we're saved by grace.
Saved by grace,
all that stuff. But they don't really get this radical thing that you're talking about. So can you maybe give us a little compare and contrast on what people might think grace is and what's really going down here?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I think, I know early on, grace to me was the initial thing. It's God loved me enough that he paid the penalty for my sin and made a way for me to get to heaven. And got that settled now. Let's stash that away, file that away. And now let's get on to living. And now living, it takes a lot of effort and principles and following rules and regulations and boundaries and so forth. So I think a lot of people think of grace as, just the final part, or the initial prayer to be saved, and then the final part. Where grace is, it's just the nature of God. It's the unconditional love of God working out in life. It's the empowerment of sharing the very life of the triune God who demonstrated his power in the resurrection. It's living every day expecting miracles that come out of the resurrection to be in my own life as I deal with my own temptations, deal with my own limitations, my own proclivities, and to expect the grace of God to empower me, and not to empower me to be independent of God, but empower me to be more dependent upon God. So I think a lot of people see grace that way. Another big misunderstanding, I think, is people see grace as, anything goes. God just loves everybody, and He doesn't really care about order, or He doesn't care about purpose, or He's not really going anywhere. He just do whatever you want to do, and you're okay. And he doesn't care. And that obviously is not the grace of God. The grace of God is freeing us from the sin that has deceived us and bound us, and empowering us to actually live out what humans were designed to be to begin with. I think sometimes in our triumphalism, we think that, God wants to make me something other than human. I think He'll settle for me just being really human, which is a created being who worships God and cooperates with God in subduing the earth. So, anyway,
all right, that's good. I'm going to put your finger there, and we'll continue with this conversation. Dudley Hall is our guest. The book is Grace Works. And we're going to back out for a little bit. The subtitle, Rescued from Senseless Rebellion, just stop it, and Lifeless Religion, whatever. Our guest is Dudley Hall, and the book is Grace Works, Rescued from Senseless Rebellion and Lifeless Religion. Dudley, there's so many that never get where you are. Where did this start? Did you wake up or in the middle of the night and had a vision that said, preach grace? And how did this start?
Well, Steve, I grew up as a Baptist boy, and what I heard at church was, Jesus wants you to be a good boy, a nice boy, and that's it pretty much. I wanted to please my parents, and I wanted to do well in school and so forth. So I was committed to be a good boy, and so I heard the principles and the stories and all that, and I wanted to be a nice kid. So my heart, was pretty wicked, but my goal was to be good. Well, to make it quick, as I went along in my growth, I wanted to be a doctor, and so I started looking into that. And I was an athlete, enough of an athlete that some schools were offering scholarships. So I was trying to find a school that I could go to pre-med and play football, and that would help me get through. I was enough of a Christian to know that you need to pray and get God's direction on those kind of things. So I was praying about where I should go and so forth. In the midst of that praying, I got really dissatisfied with everything. I couldn't get the peace of God on I couldn't get any direction. It's like God would not talk to me. And so finally I realized through a lot of struggle there that I was going in the wrong direction, that God did want me to go into ministry, which was not a very fun thought, Steve. I mean, I knew the preachers that I knew were pretty boring characters, and so I didn't want to do that. And so to me, it was a surrender. It was a transaction with God. If I will sacrifice to do this, will you bless my life? Which was my concept of grace at the time, that you can deal with God, bargain with God. And so I chose to go to Samford University on a football scholarship because it was a Baptist school, and that would teach me to be a better boy. And so I made a deal, I thought, with God that if I would speak for Him and try to learn how to be a better spokesman for Him, that He would bless me athletically and give me a platform so that particularly kids would listen to my message. Well, I played the first year and did very well. I was a starter in the first game in college and did pretty well. But then I got hurt along the way, and the doctors told me that I would never play football again. And so I was lying in the hospital after having been unconscious for several days and with a paralyzed hip. And I was apologizing to God that I could not do all the things I promised him to do, and I was sorry that I couldn't keep my end of the bargain and all of that. And I don't want to make it too dramatic, but it was pretty dramatic for me. There was a sense that Jesus was in the room with me. I didn't see anything, but there was a sense that he walked in and basically said to me in my spirit, "You don't really have to do anything. I love you just like you are." And that was so real that at that moment I said, I want to know that person. Whoever that Jesus is, I got to know him. And that started my search for grace. And the more I got to know him, the more gracious I found him to be. And I found out he didn't necessarily want me to be a good little boy. He wanted me to be a radical follower of Christ, and that the grace life can only be lived in its most radical form. I mean, you can't mix it with law, and you can't mix it with flesh. It's either love oriented and spirit empowered, or it's not even the real thing. And I found out that Paul wasn't joking when he said, "I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, but Christ lives in me, and the life that I live by faith in the Son of God." I found out that it's the grace life is radical. It's unbelievably radical, and it is love empowered. So that was my beginning, and so ever since then, Steve, I've been on that journey. I'm 72 now, so I've been on that journey all along the way of saying, I want to know that person that walked in that hospital and said, "I love you just like you are."
As you described that, I could hear that emotion in your voice, that after all this time, it still gets to you on a very deep level.
I can't get over it. I really can't. I have to apologize to audiences every once in a while for being, a weepy old man, but I'm sorry. I can't get over it.
You make it sound like it was a straight shot. You get better and better every day, every way. And you love him more and more. The older I grow, the sweeter he is, kind of thing. That hasn't been my experience. I guess over a long period of time, it really is. But there are times when I jumped off that train. And and I thought, this is over. I can't do this anymore. And found out that he loved me just as much when I wasn't on the train as he did when I was on it. And that blew me away. And that increased. Let's comment on that some.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. When are you going to experience the grace of God? It's when you need it. And it's when I fall off the track and I realize, it's not the concept of grace that keeps me going. It's that unbelievable love of Jesus that reaches back and gets you and goes, "Hey, I still love you just like you are." And so it's in our weakness that we discover his strength. It's in our sin and sinfulness and rebellion and carelessness and all of that we discover that he goes there too. And grace is there. And so that's where the enlargement of the understanding, I think, comes from, Steve. It's from our failures, not from our successes. Who wants to hear about the guy who always did it right? I don't even want to hear his story.
Because he's lying. That's why, man. He's lying through his teeth.
And God loves to pop people's hips out of socket, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He just loves it. Let me get you to a point where you're really needy.
There's a principle, and we're running out of time on this side of the thing, but that God, the only people who get better are people who know that if they don't get any better, that God will love them anyway. And you just expressed that in a way that was profound. And we'll be asking you to express it more on the other side of the break. Guys, this is very hard work. It doesn't look like it if you're watching on our video. And I mean, it looks like we're really enjoying this, but we're not. This is hard work.
Where are the cookies, Kathleen? I want some cookies.
Now that we're on video, you need cookies.
Guys, we're coming back just like Jesus. Don't go away. Our guest is Dudley Hall, and by the way, he's the founder and president of Kerygma Ventures. Kerygma is an old Italian word, and if you go to Kerygma, let me spell it for you: Kerygma Ventures, and that's the normal spelling for it. .com. You can find.
What is Kerygma? What does that mean?
We'll go. No.
Are you asking me or are you asking Steve?
Not me, man.
Steve doesn't know.
Steve doesn't know.
I think it means, I know what it means. It's Italian, like I said. And it means, hey, babe, and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, seriously, what is Kerygma?
Kerygma is one of the words used in the New Testament to talk about the proclamation of the gospel. It actually means proclaim, but it's more than just the act of proclaiming, and it carries with it a concept of content as well. And so it became the word used to describe the gospel that the apostles preached. So it is the proclamation, the actual verbalization or the expression of the content of the gospel. So my ministry was named for years. It was named Successful Christian Living Ministries. And that's simply because my lawyer, who was trying to put together the 501c3 papers, called me one day and said, we need a name for this. You want to call it Dudley Hall Ministries? And I said, for goodness sake, no. You know, I'm liable to mess up bad and ruin the whole thing, so don't call it after me. And there was a book lying on my desk that I had written for some discipleship stuff called Master Plan for Successful Christian Living. So I said, call it Successful Christian Living. And that's how much prayer went into the naming of the first one. That went on for years. And I just wanted to change the focus of the ministry from the act of successful living, which, you know, is more about what we do, to what really captures my heart, which is the announcement, proclamation, practice of the gospel of grace. So that's what Kerygma means.
Dudley, I don't have a question. I wanted to just make a comment. I noticed that in the preface that you wrote for this new updated version, you said, which I thought was just fabulous, you said, and this is a quote, "If I totally rewrote Graceworks, I could probably say some things better, but I couldn't say any better things." And I thought that was just fabulous, and was another reminder to me of the simplicity of the gospel and the truth of grace. It doesn't require a whole lot. I have a family member who is at a very elderly age, is a new believer, and he is right now stuck in that place where he's being told all the things that he has to do to be a good Christian, and he's drowning, And I spend hours and hours on the phone with him, and I just keep saying, no, that's wrong. It's not about you. It's about what Jesus has done for you. no matter what you do. If today's a good day or if today's a bad day, it doesn't change how God feels about you. He loves you just the way you are. And so I really appreciated this because I thought this is really a great statement. I could probably say some things better, but I couldn't say any better things. It's just the truth.
Yeah, well, thanks. I don't know. I'm sure somebody gave me that statement. I'm not smart enough to figure out that kind of stuff, but I do believe that.
Yeah.
Another experience that I'll relate to you right quick is I went home from college one time, after I was learning a lot more stuff, and they were expanding my mind, which they should have been doing. But I went home kind of full of myself and full of a lot of textual criticism and all that kind of stuff. And I went to my parents' little Baptist church, and I was sitting there, and they were singing the same, by the same out-of-tune piano they had for the last 50 years. And the guy was leading the music, was a wonderful man, but he didn't know much about music. And they were singing, I Love to Tell the Story, that old hymn. And as they did, I was almost transported. I was captured. I realized that I was looking into another realm, and I sang that, and it changed my life. And I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and His glory, of Jesus and His love. And when in scenes of glory I sing a new song, it'll still be that same old story.
Yep.
I've loved so long. I didn't know then, but that was my commissioning. That was really the call of God on my life. He was assigning me to tell that story, never to get outside of it, to always be trying to expand my understanding of it, of course. But that story is the power of God unto salvation, and it is the gospel of grace. So I don't think we can ever say anything better than that.
No.
Oh,
Great.
Dudley, that is so good. I almost got saved. I mean, I was this close. Dudley Hall is our guest, and his book is Grace Works. Should have called it Grace Still Works. And if it doesn't work, you're in really, really bad trouble. We'll talk with Dudley on the other side of the break. So don't go anyplace, or you'll be really sorry if you do. So glad you're here. Dudley Hall is with us. You go to KerygmaVentures.com. Kerygma is Keyrygma, and Ventures, as you know, Ventures.com. And you can find his books, including Glad to Be Left Behind. And,
What?
Well, listen, and there's also Shorty the Substitute Ram. You can also follow Dudley Hall on Twitter, at Kerygma Ventures.
Hey, Dudley, in the title, you got Grace Works, Rescued from Senseless Rebellion and Lifeless Religion. So my take on senseless rebellion is that as much as I rebel, I end up right where he wants me to be, which is so frustrating. Like, he's so tricky. You know what I mean? Like, he works all things together for good. Really. Even the rebellion. Is that what you're getting at, or something else?
Well, rebellion is just, it's crazy. And part of it is what you just said, is because, so who are we to hold our fist up in front of the God of this universe, who has expressed himself as pretty smart and pretty wise and pretty powerful. And then, I'm going to stand up and stick up my chest and tell him that I've got a better way, and that what he says really doesn't work, and that what he's done on the cross is not enough, and I'm going to find another way. I mean, how senseless is that? I mean, we pride ourselves in being smart. We've been enlightened, and so the smarter you get, the less you need God. Well, what I was trying to say is, how stupid can you be? If your mind is enlightened, you will recognize God more and more and more, and you'll see, as I said earlier, you'll see that you're a human, and it's okay to be human, which means you've got some limitations, but it also means you've got some fabulous privileges. It means you get to be a partner with God on the earth. So that's kind of what I was heading at. But as I try to deal with in the book, I try to show how law is righteous and as wonderful as it is to show you what a desperate situation you're in, and it introduces you to grace. It's your school marm that brings you to grace. So yeah, rebellion. People ask me, what if you can't live by grace? What should you do? And I said, we'll live by the law. You'll get there.
So rebellion, in your take on it, is rejecting grace and embracing the rules. I mean,
right.
A lot of people think of rebellion in sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But I mean, you're saying rejecting this amazing proclamation of unconditional love.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, drugs and rock and roll and all that kind of stuff, that's kind of shallow rebellion. I mean, real rebellion is when you look at what Jesus has done on the cross and what God has done for us, and then you think, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it through good works, or I'm going to transact with God in some way, and I'm going to find a way to be so obedient that I force God's hand, and He's going to have to bless me whether He wants to or not, because I am such a good guy. That's rebellion at a little deeper level.
Dudley, you said what made me think of it is that you talked about going to the church of your youth with an out of tune piano and the little Baptist church and what happened in terms of changing you, but other things that you have said reminded me too. I thought of the movie The Apostle and the way it was done with such care not to make fun of or be righteous about the small church and the people who love God. I love that movie, by the way, but that brings me to the question I want to ask. There's something about religion that makes you self-righteous, isn't there? And elitist, and you look down your nose at the kinds of things you're talking about. Talk to us about that. What is it that does that?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you could help me with that, because I still struggle with that some.
Well, I have that conquered. I have the victory over that particular thing.
Okay, good.
I just wanted you to know that.
Yeah, great. Even with the whole concept of grace, I run into it because I like to read books on grace, hear messages on grace, because I want to be a learner, and yet I run across a lot of self-righteousness about grace. I finally got it now. I mean, I've got the key, and that's taking religion and replacing grace with it, replacing that the humility of having. Just none of us have arrived. People say, well, how do you walk in grace? And I say, God has orchestrated that I fail often enough that I need grace. It's refreshed in my life every day. And if I go through a few days where I'm not conscious of failure, I start thinking I got this thing figured out. And I don't.
And the Cretans don't have it figured out is a part of that mantra. And it's the most dangerous place for a ministry like this, because, and for your ministry too, because at the center is this thing of grace, and you think they don't get it. They're Cretans. They don't understand. And that's not a bit different than what people have said about us, just a different subject. And it's hard to not be self-righteous. In fact, I'm feeling pretty good about critiquing self-righteousness right now. and the feeling, by the way, is rather self-righteous now that I think about it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think we just love rules because we want to be independent of God. I mean, we don't want to need, and even this whole thing that you're talking about with getting Pharisaical about grace is like, I've created this rule that you have to get grace, and other people don't get it, and now I'm superior. We just want to feel better
so
than
true.
others,
Yeah.
and we
So true.
want to be independent of God.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey.
Good point. Very good point. That's true.
Hey, listen, you've been dancing around this, and I've seen you try to dance, and you're a Baptist, and you don't do it well. But Jesus
right.
seems to like you, and that's one of the funniest things you do. But at any rate, you've been talking about and referring to it without saying it, about the two mindsets, do to be and who I am. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think I've got a chapter in the book about the do-to-be tree, eating the fruit of the do-to-be tree, which is basically religion. It was concocted by Adam and Eve when they were behind that bush. It's like, okay, we're separated from God, so what can we do to be what we're supposed to be? And there's nothing you can do. Jesus came and did everything that needs to be done so we could be who He created us to be.
Yeah.
That works for me. Hey, Dudley, we're out of time. I don't know what
Thank you
happened.
for letting me be on.
Oh, thank you for being on. You bless us and you bless this audience, and you continue to be a benediction in my life. Dudley Hall, you get a hold of this book. It'll change your life. The name of it is Grace Works. And then you can feel self-righteous about grace. Dudley Hall is a benediction. He's always been that to me and to so many others. He really does get it, and he's not self-righteous about it, which is a very hard thing to do. But guys, I know you're getting tired of this. All you do is talk about grace. What about politics?
Ugh.
What
No.
about sociology and philosophy? And what about teaching us really good stuff that we didn't know about the Bible? Well, I guess all of that's okay, but the bottom line is Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. And it's the heart of the Christian faith. It's what it's all about. And so we're joining with a bunch of others in an effort to make that the main thing. Everything else is secondary. The gospel is primary. And the gospel isn't the way we become a Christian or come into a relationship with Jesus. Well, it's that, but it's the way we live. It's the way we think. It focuses our worldview. It makes us who we are. And so if we're ever going to have an awakening in this country, it's going to be right there. It's not going to have anything to do with politics and philosophy and sociology and academics. It's going to be Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so.
And if you don't like it, enjoy your senseless rebellion.
Yeah, right.
And speaking of teaching us really good stuff, I must say, I outdid myself next week. I have been working long and hard for this celebrity interview. You aren't going to believe who I got next week.
Who you got?
Eric, Steve Brown.
Whoa.
Yes,
What
new
a coup.
book.
What a coup.
New book, Talk the Walk, coming out on June the 3rd. We're going to interview him. Steve, you don't need to show up because we're going to have Steve Brown here. So it's it's going to be a great hour.
I got to read that book.
It'd probably be a good idea.
It would be. It'd be really, I only wrote it 2 years ago, and That's how long it takes to get
Well,
it.
yeah,
up
the
to
problem is
publication.
we don't have a copy of it yet, so
Oh, man.
you're in big trouble.
I don't remember what I said. At least it wasn't written 30 years ago, so I haven't had time to change my mind.
We're
You
going
know,
to have fun. You're going to have fun.
It was probably something about grace. I think you can just
You
kind of
think?
riff.
You think? Guys, we're out of here, but we're going to come back same place, same time next week. It's our fond hope that you join us. And between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't. That gives you a wide, wide berth.